Hey friends, today I'm going to show you our orchard and what we've done to it since we moved here. Alright guys, before we get into the first row, our orchard has 4 rows. Grapes, raspberries, and 2 tree rows, as you can see here, if I position the camera right. So, the owners before us had a lot of this here, and one of the reasons I love this property. It did have, from the, they gave us a map of the orchard or what used to be here. They definitely had a lot of failures, or I don't know what happened, but there's a lot missing. So it gave us some room to add our own touch. But there's a lot that was already here that was great to have. So we're gonna start with the grapes and work our way to the front. I call that the front because the driveway is right there. I'm gonna flip you guys around and we're just gonna start walking some rows. All right, to start this first row, we've got elderberries. Now these elderberries we planted, I believe, 2 years ago, and they are somewhere between 4 and 6 feet tall. They grow like mad. Now, check this out. Apparently deer must like elderberries because I'm not sure of anything else that will strip the leaves like that. But you know what? They will be just fine. They've really stripped this one down, and a toddler, I believe, ripped that branch off. So we are mulching underneath these. We do have some of this like weed fabric that we're trying to use just to keep weeds down and help keep the mulch in place, just to help the mulch. But I'm not sure it's working so well. Well, time will tell. All right, the rest of this row is all grapes. This hasn't changed almost at all. The only thing we've done to this so far is pruned it. The pruning, we watched some videos, and for the most part, once these are dormant, we're pruning sort of these canes down to a couple of nubs, a couple of nodes, 2, 3, I believe is the video I watched. But you know what? That hasn't seemed, it's kept them under control, but I haven't felt like we've been getting a good harvest. This vine down here is definitely the best growing one, and we got a lot of grapes on that this year, but they were all very small grapes. Now this one and that one are Seedless Concord, if I remember, so they are delicious little grapes. Let's move down to this and check it out. Look at this thing. This thing is, I don't know if these poles are 20 feet apart. This thing spans nearly 40 feet. So this thing is robust, but we definitely get some pest pressure, and well, towards the end of the year, you get some sort of a fungus, it looks like. But if you guys have any tips for how to get better grapes, I know we live in a fairly serious grape region, so some of you guys, if you're from around here, might know something we should do. Or maybe I'm pruning them wrong. Maybe we can change something and get some better grapes. Now down here, we've got 3 others. I don't actually know what these varieties are. I cannot remember off the top of my head. They are a white grape, if I recall, and we've almost not gotten anything off of these, which is a bit of a bummer. But once again, they're staying alive, so maybe if I can learn a little more about grapes, that would be great. All right, let's move on to row 2. Row 2 is a berry row. Let's ignore this stuff right here at the very end here. I'll flip you around and show you what's going on. We'll cover this mess in the next row. That's sort of, we haven't finished filling out this row yet. It's a little bit of a cover crop. So starting here, from right here down to right there. Oh, if it'll focus on the raspberries. These are raspberries, red raspberries. We got these red raspberries from the county county plant sale, like the Soil and Water Conservation District or County Conservation District has a plant sale every year, and they were a great deal. I believe it was, I can't remember what the price was, but it was way cheaper than if you were to buy them in the store. And these things, I planted these things in the spring. Let me see if I can give you, they're 3 feet tall and they have filled in. I planted these things in the wet muck of spring, which was not the best, but they're looking a little rough now due to it being fall and getting eaten on by some bugs and I think some deer or something else. But they are growing like mad. We even got some berries on them this year. And these things were 6 inches tall when we bought them. So I'm pretty excited for these next year. Hoping we're gonna have a pretty serious little harvest. Look at this right here. So this is the original plant right here. Well, this is the original plant. Out here, this thing is almost 2 feet away from the main plant. 18 inches, 2 feet. That's a sucker coming up. So I definitely have to be mowing in between along the rows to keep these plants in check. But that is totally fine. I mow here anyway. I am so excited these things are gonna fill in between themselves, and I'll just have to come in and prune and to keep them from probably choking themselves out. All right, from here to there, this is leftover from our previous owners. I don't know what actually all this is. Some of it's definitely weeds, grass, but there's something in here like this. That looks like some sort of a ornamental plant to me. And we definitely get some flowers in here. I don't know if these are lilies. Is that what the seed pod is? Is that like daylilies or something? I'm not sure. Let me guys know if you know what that is. Or if Patty, you're listening. I'm not sure if that's a weed. That gets a whole boatload of little flowers on it. The bees love it. All right, moving into blueberries. That is the rest of this row. And as you can tell, those blueberries down there, we'll get to those. Those are the original blueberries. We added 8 more blueberries. The blueberries on this end, these 4 are Patriot. I love the red foliage these things get in the fall. It's just beautiful. All right, and as you can tell, we mulched around these too. You could not see this originally, and it was not supposed to go out that far. Chickens are getting in here and scratching and getting bugs, I guess, so they're loving it. So the next 4 blueberries we have in our row are blue crop blueberries. We also got all these blueberries from the county plant sale. Once again, great price. If you're looking this spring, your county conservation district might just have a sale like this if you're looking to put in some blueberries or raspberries or trees for a much better price. All right, now we come to champion blueberries here. Not champions, but they are great blueberries. These plants are doing phenomenal. They've always been doing phenomenal. From the year we got here, they were great. They did need a little pruning, but we've been getting tons of them off of this. These things are like 6 feet. These 2 on this end, these are about 6 feet tall. That one, that might be almost 7 feet. I'm 6'5", and that thing's taller than I am. Can I get a view of that? Maybe. I do have the, let's see, I do have these written down. The one on the end is, these are all 6 different varieties. I looked at the map we had. It's Ivanhoe, Blue Ray, Herbert, Jersey, Blue Crop, and Atlantic. These things produced fantastically, and there does seem to be a little bit of like throughout the year they ripen at different times. So we were getting blueberries for just for a very long time, and it was fantastic. They're so good. Guys, let me tell you something about fruit grown from home. The kiddo there, he loves these blueberries, but he will not always eat blueberries from the store. Guys, they do not taste the same. I don't know why. Maybe they're a weird variety, just because they travel well. A lot of times that's it. Most of the varieties of things you get from the store, they need them to survive the trip from like South America or Mexico. A long trip for something that's not supposed to have a shelf life like that. It's meant to be eaten almost immediately or used almost immediately. So they come up with these varieties that can travel really well, but I don't know if there's ever a case where that doesn't sacrifice an enormous quantity in taste. So, all right, let's, actually there's a little more to this row. Let's move on. All right, these are something that you almost can't see. So there's 3 of these here. There's no foliage left on these. There's 1 leaf. Guys, this isn't from fall entirely. The deer love these things. I've got 2 more of them in the next row. What these are is, let me hope I'm remembering correctly. They are a bush cherry. I believe the Hansen variety. Hansen's bush cherry is what they're called. And they are not exactly the same, but they're very, very similar to like a cherry that would grow on a tree. Okay, but I don't want giant tree right here, so we went with the bush cherry variety. And hey, I love variety. One of my goals with this orchard was to put as much variety in here as I physically can. Guys, just variety helps deter pests. All right, once again, another bush cherry, another bush cherry. Actually, this one has some leaves on it still. These things have been struggling a bit, but they've been struggling, but they're surviving, and we're excited about that. All right, there was a bunch of other stuff in amongst here. Most of what you're seeing now looks a mess. It's a lot of like a ground ivy. I've been letting it grow because it deters a lot of other weeds, and it's really low growing, so that'll mess some things up. But he didn't sit on the bush cherry, I guess. So I had some violas in here. We'll see. Should come back next year, I'm hoping. And those were around the outside. They look really pretty. And the remainders of some marigolds, so they look nice. All right, some other things in here. We have, look at this thing. This is thyme. I threw some thyme in here because I just had a thyme plant and I didn't know where to put it. This thing is doing great. Thyme is supposed to be pretty cold hardy, so I planted this year and I am hoping that it comes back. I planted loads of herbs in here. Wow, that smells really good. I planted a whole bunch of herbs in here, things that I want to survive, hopefully be perennial, or reseed themselves if they're not a perennial. Right next to that, hey, don't eat that. Don't eat that, that's not good. Right next to this is, let's put this on wide angle. Right next to this is a currant. I cannot remember. I have 2 blacks and 2 reds. I can't remember where I put them, but we'll see next year. Oh. You want to watch the video with me?
Yeah.
All right, I'm not gonna have a hand here. Right next to that, I put rhubarb. Yeah, we're putting rhubarb in the orchard. Now, I should probably stand back on these 2 rows. So we obviously have trees, but we decided to put like garden bed style underneath the trees because it's hard to mow right up under branches. And you know, I don't know, it's some more space. It's gonna be shaded, but the goal is sort of just, I wanna fill this up with enough plants that weeds can't grow, or the weeds just aren't very hard to deal with. So down at this end, we've started. Now the rest of this row is absolutely not finished. This is just weeds. Right here though, we have a pear tree. This one is a Bartlett, if I'm remembering correctly. Bartlett Pear. This little pear tree is just a survivor. When we got here it was probably, I don't know, 4 feet tall. It looked rough. I don't know what happened to it. I think it probably had just some horrible pressure from pests or disease one year. It looked like it had some big chunks that died, but it's managed to come back. All they did was some pruning to try and help it, and it's done phenomenal. It produced an enormous quantity for a little tree. It's getting a little tall, but it's done great. That was there originally. Right next to this pear tree here is false indigo. Now it's split due to a heavy windstorm. I'm not sure why it grew this way, but false indigo this is not a fruiting tree. This is what I thought was supposed to be a bush. It's getting awfully tree-like, but it's supposed to be a nitrogen fixer. This is in the, I believe, the legume family. All right, let's see what we got next. I don't remember where we planted all these. All right, this is a Methley. Methley is a plum variety. So one of my goals here in the orchard is I'm following, if you've ever heard of him, there's a guy by the name of Stefan Sobkowiak, I believe. See if I'm pronouncing it right. Sobkowiak, I believe. He has an orchard in Canada, just across the border. I mean, like, I think it's like an hour and a half drive from here. And he has what he calls the Permaculture Orchard. And the way he avoids pests and disease is he almost never plants the same type of tree next to itself. So we've got a pear. We actually have another pear. Oops. But we plant a plum in between. There used to be another pear tree here, but it died. So we're replacing it with something not of like kind, not of the same variety. So the pests will not be the same. They will not have the same pests. They won't have the same disease cycles. And so we're breaking that from being able to touch leaves touching the other tree. And bugs can climb from tree to tree. Funguses can go through touch or a small breeze. And so that just kind of helps to break the pest cycle, disease cycles. Okay, the rest of this row, the understory planting is primarily Daikon Radish, and we'll have to hit that as we get further down. This little tree here is a Lovell peach. I got these trees from the county as well, so hopefully these are good for this area. This here is an overgrown Spearmint, this monstrosity. I don't know if you can see the tomato cage in there, but this was a tomato I planted out here and just didn't touch it. I can't remember what the variety was, but it did pretty well. I mean, it was minorly shaded, but guys, you can plant tomatoes in places other than your garden. You can experiment. It is permitted. After that, we have this tree. Now, let's see. What is this thing? This is a Shiro Plum. This thing started at like that height. It's like doubled. Doesn't have a lot of foliage on it. Hopefully next year this thing just goes bananas. We planted this year. All these new trees we planted this year. Okay, it's an hour later probably. Kiddo's asleep. Let's resume the tour and get this finished out. Last thing here was this Shiro Plum. And let's see, down in here, if we can see it, amongst all of this stuff that is not the right one. Down in here amongst all this other stuff is, I don't know if you'll recognize this. This is a Spearmint. If I can get it in the sun right. All right, yeah, this is Spearmint. Depending on who you are, you may or may not know Spearmint and any mint, they like to spread, take over. And actually, I'm kind of hoping they will. Once these radishes aren't here anymore, it'll be free to spread, and we'll have more mint than we can shake a stick at. And hopefully I'll be able to keep it under general control just by mowing along the edges. It can take over this area if it wants, and it doesn't get that tall, so it won't bother the trees. This next tree is an apple. Yeah, we have a lot of other apples, but this is a Granny Smith apple. We picked Granny Smith just because wife likes Granny Smith apples, so, you know, do what makes the wife happy. Trying to think. I don't think there's much of anything else in here. We do have this little tree tube. Let's see if I can make it focus down in there. There are some leaves, what looks like, on this. And this, well, my marker, I can't read it. I believe that was a pawpaw, I believe. Planted this spring as well. Didn't do too well. Thought it died, but it looks like it might be coming back. So we'll see if that works out. I got that tree. Got this pawpaw for free. This is either a persimmon. That's either a persimmon or a pawpaw as well. I got these and a bunch of other trees across the property for free from a Pennsylvania, I believe it's called Keystone 10 Million. They're trying to plant a whole bunch of trees, and it's some sort of program that I locally got involved in and got a handful of trees for free. So down here you'll also see a couple of these. Pawpaw, persimmon possibly. I can't remember how I planted them. Anyway, next tree in this row is, this is what I believe this is a crabapple. Never seen, I don't think we got any larger apples off of it. So my best guess is a crabapple. Now I am very excited to have this tree in the orchard, even though it does not produce any edible fruit, because if it is a crabapple, crabapples have a benefit of being a very good pollinator for other apple trees. If you didn't know, apple trees need to be paired with a different variety, typically, in order to pollinate. So, but crabapples work for almost any variety as a co-pollinator. So, let's see, moving on to, actually, let's step back. We also kind of expanded the orchard out this direction a little bit. Like I said, this is persimmon. You can still read the tag. It is not looking too hot down in there, but we'll see if it grows next year. It's also fall, so leaves are falling off everything. This is also a persimmon. This one got a bit bigger, and I think it might actually live. That's cool. So yes, so those two are definitely pawpaws. Then one more apple tree down here, Honeycrisp apple, also a favorite in the house. So didn't have one here, so we decided to give it a go. Now, Honeycrisp and Granny Smith, as far as I know, are not terribly disease resistant, but we are spacing them away from the other apple trees in an attempt to keep, like I said, disease from spreading or insect pressure from spreading. Oh, I almost forgot. Daikon Radish. Yes. So this Daikon Radish, which is all this green you see, growth you see everywhere, it's a radish. It's also called a tillage radish. It is, let's see if we can get a good look down in here. It kind of looks like a carrot here, this one. It is, that one's pretty much carrot size. These things can get huge. Now in here, I'm not sure. I haven't seen any of them get excessively large. I can show you some in the garden that have sprung up in places that are enormous. These things can get like 2 feet long and like 3-4 inches in diameter. There's one in the garden that's as big as my arm at least. Look at this thing. Look at this. It's bigger than my arm. It's huge. So what I did in here, the reason I did this is what was called a cover crop. By this, the dirt in this area, it was bare, and bare dirt is never good. Things don't grow well if the dirt sits bare for too long. And well, the sun heated it up. There's some clay in here. It got hard. It just wasn't good for planting into. So I sprinkled down this daikon seed. You can get daikon seed for super cheap. You can eat these actually. I've never eaten them. I know some people do. So that is a thing you can do. But I sprinkled these down because it was cheap. I got like 5-pound bag for $30. And these things have just been growing like mad. This actually is the second time they've grown this year. I think they reseeded, or there was enough seed left that they sprung up again. I had mowed these down and they reseeded themselves. So, but these will die in the winter. One of my plans is, if I get around to it, I'm just gonna like smash all these down as best I can. And I'm gonna put just a buttload of wood chips on top of them. Because what happens with daikon is, especially in the winter months and in the spring, these will rot down, and these big roots, going down into the soil. This one's going in maybe 6 inches. All right, these do tend to like come up out of the soil, but these are amazing for decompacting soil. And this root, the worms will love this. When this starts to break down and rot, when these rot and the worms eat them, you will just have worm castings, which is worm poop, just fill that hole where that used to be and just turn this into amazing soil. So that is the goal. That is the point of this. And then we're going to plant some other things in here. I don't know what we're going to plant in here yet, but that is the point of the Daikon Radish. So yeah, let's come back here to this row and start over again. Actually, out here in the yard, you can see some Daikon Radish. Now, I let these grow because in the springtime, this unfortunately is a bit of a low area. Primarily in the spring when we get a lot of rain. This is a low area, and we just have rain sitting here. Which is why this rhubarb looks sad, because we actually had a bunch of rain. There was some water sitting here. So I left these daikon here to see if they can, I don't know if it's not draining here or if our water table is just too high. But I'm letting them punch some holes down through the dirt there and see if that'll break up if there's a hard pan there. Experiment. So another rhubarb. We got a rhubarb here. Guys, I planted a bunch of rhubarb this year just as, once again, an experiment. I just put them all through the orchard here to take up space. They are great ground cover. You almost never get weeds under rhubarb because these leaves are so big. They just blot stuff out, and it's food. All right, this tree, I believe this is also a crabapple based on these teeny tiny hanging fruit. Once again, great pollinator. All right, in this spot, when we got here, like I said before, this is a pawpaw, but this actually, there was a tree here. There was another apple tree, a very, very sad looking apple tree. And upon really close inspection, this last winter and spring, I believe that tree had just was infested with fire blight. Fire blight is a fungal disease that there is no remedy for other than absolute removal, just removing the tree, removing the branches, whatever's infested with it, and getting rid of it as far as you can, burning it, because it can still, if you just throw them in a pile, that fire blight can still spread. Now, since we've gotten rid of this tree, the rest of our trees have not had any issues. Last year, I was pulling fire blight infested leaves out. Maybe fire blight is something we'll have to hit more in depth at a later date. If you want to know more about that, let me know. Another rhubarb, and all along the side, maybe I'll have to work my way around. There's a lot of plants down towards this end, so I might have to jump from side to side here. We have a sage in here. Let's work our way to the end. This is sage. Now, sage, I believe, this is an experiment for sure. This is one of the herbs that I think will overwinter. I could be wrong. But once again, with most of these plants, I spent almost no money on. This plant, and I believe every single plant in here, outside of the berry bushes, all the herbs, the rhubarb. Guys, I got a pack of seeds for like $3 or $4, and I planted all of the plants from just a couple dollars worth of seeds. We had marigolds in here. Now, these marigolds are all dried up, but what I've seen marigolds do before is we'll have marigolds here next year. Probably there'll be a ring around this plant of pop-up marigolds next year, as they love to reseed themselves around here. I have it happen all the time. Another marigold that was planted here this year is chives. Guys, I got this chives from my grandma's house. It was free. This was one of many plants. And this actually is huge. This can be chopped up. We can come through here and make this into 4 or 5 plants, dig it up, chop the roots apart, replant it in different places if we wanted to. And this will just come back every year. This is very cold hardy. It comes back really early. Wish we had smell-o-vision. Chives, if you've never smelled it, chives are like garlic. Not garlic. They're like onion. They're a little garlicky, but they're like an onion. You can use them in anything you use onion in. It's a really mild onion flavor. Great for a garnish. It's awesome. Another sage. Oh, time to back up. Another big tree. Oh, sorry. Skip that tree too. Anyway, guys, apple tree. Another apple tree. I don't know if I need to step back for this. These trees are original, obviously. They're pretty big. Had a guy come out and help me. He's guessing 30 years old, which jives with the age of the property and when our house was built. Is a very likely possibility. So I find these trees very valuable. Guys, I don't need to know what the exact variety is in order for apples to be useful. Just taste them, see what they're like. See if you're good eating apples. See if they're more of a preservation apple, a cider apple. You can do a ton of things with apples. Coming in here. Hey, this is something I didn't clean out. I did not prepare for this tour at all. This is another tomato cage. There's an old tomato here that needs pulled out, cleaned out. I didn't plan this very well and accidentally planted this tomato on top of rhubarb, basically. So, and then we have a weed here growing up. Kind of looks like the rhubarb. More sage. We planted loads of marigolds. They're just pretty in the summertime. This tree here, this is one of the best looking trees that we planted, although it's getting suckers like mad. This thing's gonna need pruned. This is, I believe, another peach. This is a Red Haven. This is a Red Haven peach. I am very hopeful for this peach tree. This peach tree, I fit amongst these apple trees, and these, because these other two are down here are apples as well. I fit it amongst them, once again, to break the cycle of apple trees and hopefully keep things like fire blight, which, unless I'm wrong, fire blight does not affect peach trees. Fire blight affects things in the apple family. I cannot remember what the family of tree is, but pears, like the pear tree back there, pears are also in that apple family. So pears and apples, some of the diseases do cross over. But as far as I'm aware, peaches and plums, like the things I'm planting in here, they do not have the same diseases. All right, right down here next to this one, this is a little seed pod for this. This is garlic chives. Now, I've never grown garlic chives before this year, so this is I'm pretty excited about these guys. These are, use them the same way as far as I'm aware. I'm smelling these things. As far as I'm aware, it's the same basic idea as onion chives, but it has more of a garlicky flavor. And they have a flat leaf, not a round leaf, so it's a little different. But I think these spread similar to the other chives. And obviously, we're getting seed pods here, so these will probably reseed themselves and spread out. And that's exactly what I want. I want this to fill in with plants that I want. I want it to be lush. That's the goal. All right, leftover jalapeno that I decided to grow in here. Guys, you can grow jalapenos in some mild shade. These trees over here were very lush during the summer, and they cast a lot of shade in this direction. That direction is the south, so there was definitely shade coming from this direction a little bit. I guess not in the summer. Summer it's more overhead. It's more this way. But don't be afraid to experiment. Once again, it's super fun to experiment. Look at this sage plant. Once again, another sage. This thing is huge and thick, and pretty sure we took quite a lot off of this. This is a currant right next to it. This currant's doing much better than some of the other currants. I didn't get any fruit off of them this year, but excited for next year. All right, buried in here, this I believe is lemon balm. Yeah, I believe that's what this is. I got this, if I'm remembering correctly. Also got this from my grandma. She has this grown everywhere. This is another one of the things you can dig up and just take anywhere. And then buried behind that, more chives, onion chives. All right, before we move down to these trees, let's skip over to the other side because I'm spotting something here I forgot. Yes, so this is yarrow. Yarrow, I don't know a lot about. I do know that it makes very pretty flowers. And I do know that it has uses as in herbal remedies, medicinal uses. All right, moving on to the next trees. I believe one of these is a Northern Spy. That's the only, Northern Spy is the only variety I can remember right now. What I do know about the apple trees in this row is I don't think I've ever seen any of those apple varieties in a store. That doesn't mean they're not good. I tried some apples this year and they were fantastic. These apple trees are very large, very well established, and I'm so excited to have them. Now underneath here again, we have a little more yarrow in here. Now this big plant, if you weren't looking close, you might think that it was another rhubarb. Now this thing's gotten all eaten on, I believe by deer. We have deer in here, probably deer, some deer tracks. This is, okay, I completely blanked as to what this plant is. This is comfrey, Russian comfrey. This is called, well, it's comfrey, but it is considered a dynamic accumulator. The point of this plant as a dynamic accumulator is it has deep roots, pulls up minerals and nutrients from deep within the earth, at least as deep as they go. I don't know how deep they go, but I do know that using comfrey in your composts and things like that will add a lot of nutrient value to it that you wouldn't otherwise get. Now there's a lot of other plants that do this, but comfrey is definitely one of the more popular ones, also leading to some people exaggerating its effectiveness. And because of that somewhat what some people consider exaggeration, you'll find plenty of articles online calling it a myth. But I have people I trust who consider it to be great. So once again, this is another thing that kind of spreads, but I can keep chopping this down. I can even chop this down and put this around the trees to help suppress weeds and to sort of fertilize. Anyway, oh, also, comfrey is a medicinal. So, another medicinal. Great things to have around. You can see over here, another sage, another sage. We weren't really crazy with the sage this year. Oh, also, things I haven't been able to find, although I know there's one over here. More thyme. Let's see if we can get over here and look. We have more thyme in here. Now these thymes didn't do as well as the first one we saw, and I know there are more down through here, but they are so small and they're browning out a little bit that they're hard to spot. But they're spreading, and I'm hoping they survive and come back next year. Hopefully quite well. Hey there, bud. All right, more chives. Not a lot of chives. Once again, they're just great. They're great to have around, and they suppress a lot of weeds. Where they're at, they just don't have to weed them. More lemon balm in here. I'm not sure I planted all this lemon balm. Some of this just seems to have come up, which I'm not sad about, because that is a great, lemon balm is great for teas. I know a lot of people use them who do custom tea blends. They use them inside their teas. This stick thing here, this stick that doesn't have any leaves on it, this was another currant. Looking at it, we do have some buds on here. I'm hoping this lives. Maybe it's gonna come back from the bottom next year. Who knows? More marigolds. And I think that is everything for this row. Guys, in the summertime, this row is really pretty. It's right next to our driveway. There was a lot of flowers in here. And we put down a lot of wood chips. A lot of wood chips. This is not terribly labor intensive. This is not no labor either. Putting down wood chips is definitely not no labor. It's definitely takes some work. I don't do an enormous quantity of weeding in here though. And over time, the weed pressure will be less and less as I add more and more plants, and as the plants that are here spread and reproduce. When these plants fill all the way in, if I want to add something else, I'm just gonna have to tear some stuff out that I already have that I like. What a problem. I'm just full of plants that I like. Who knows, maybe someday we'll decide this wasn't a great idea. That's to be seen. Is absolutely an experiment. Train coming. I think we're gonna have to stop for a second. Hey folks, thanks for watching. I really enjoy making these videos, and this one was a little hard because I have a tendency to ramble. But you know, I wanna encourage you guys, like, you can do this too. You don't need this much space. You don't need to have your own orchard or have a lot of space. You can do this in town. You can do this in your backyard on a smaller scale. You can fit a lot of food in a small space. And part of that is why I'm planting some of these things under these trees. Because you hear all the time that you gotta have sun, you gotta have sun. And that is definitely true for some things. But some of these tomatoes behind me, you know, the ones that were in the shade, they didn't do as well. They still produced tomatoes. You didn't get a ginormous harvest, but you know, if you're starting them for seed, you're spending pennies on a plant. And that means you have the ability to experiment. Don't discount experimentation. It is really fun if you're into gardening, if you're into growing things, if you're into being a little more self-sufficient. That's why I'm growing herbs that are perennial. I don't need to go to the store and buy herbs. Yeah, they're cheap, but you know what? Fresh herbs are so much tastier. It is so empowering to step outside and grab some herbs out of your garden in order to make something that for your family. So I just wanted to encourage you guys, and I hope you all have a fantastic day, and thank you for sticking with me. Love you guys.